Welcome back to Uncharted, your sidekick for life. This episode is all about mentorship, entrepreneurship, and the power of peer-to-peer learning with our guest, Matthew Thomas, an investor, mentor, and business strategist who has spent years helping early-stage companies scale and succeed. Matthew's journey took him from a small town in Oklahoma to the University of Oklahoma to working in startups and eventually building and selling his own company, Academic Works. Along the way, mentorship played a crucial role in opening his eyes to new possibilities, shifting his mindset, and shaping his career. We dive deep into the importance of mentorship, the role of accelerators like Entrepreneurs Organization, also known as EO, and how peer-to-peer support helps entrepreneurs break through revenue ceilings and grow their businesses. Plus, Matthew shares the pivotal moments and mentors who changed his life, proving that the right guidance can make all the difference. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, an established business owner, or just someone looking for guidance on your journey, this episode you won't want to miss. Let's get into it.
All right. Welcome to Uncharted, your sidekick for life. I'm excited to have Matt Thomas in the house today.
Welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And as you know, Matt, we are here to talk all about mentorship, all about how that, what we found is historically like 10% of people like have mentors throughout their life. They kind of open up the world for them and take from inside this, I always call it a box, go to school, get your career, and then kind of thinking outside the box and seeing the grander world for what it is. We always have these cliche things that we hear throughout our life. You could be president if you want. You can do anything you want, put your mind to it, but nobody tells you how to do it when you're at that, when you're younger. At least they didn't tell me at that point. And that's the power of mentorship, though, because mentors they're not going to tell you how to necessarily be president, or maybe, but they'll tell you next steps or broaden your horizons. And so super important mentorship. And we're on this quest to broaden mentorship to the masses, scale it. And so part of what I'm working on as a company through Founding Up is scalable mentorship and using AI and roadmaps and all kinds of stuff. So what we're here to learn today is kind of roadmaps for life. And so the only way we can do that is through like talking to people and figuring out what they've done and
how did they do it,
what their life looked like. So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing today, and then maybe we work backwards.
Okay, sounds good. So these days I spend a fair amount of time working with early stage companies in kind of two buckets. One is more academic. So through the University of Texas, the Herb Kelleher Entrepreneurship Center, I was the chair of the entrepreneurships, the advisory board for 3 years. Supposed to be a 1-year appointment, and then COVID and so on, but it's great. They put a lot of programming, like hands-on programming around trying to teach students like a pragmatic way of approaching starting a company. So how do you go from 0 to 1, product market fit, things like that. Not so much just like the academic side of it, but the actual hands-on go do it.
Cool.
And so that's kind of one bucket, and then the other is advising early stage companies that are actually operating companies. So one is through this organization called the Entrepreneurs Organization. It's a worldwide organization. So we have an accelerator here, which that term, it's been around for 20 years. That term is morphed where it's kind of people associated with like, we'll take a stake in your company and give you off space. We don't do that. This is people. We're a nonprofit. Yeah. The companies pay to be members, and then we have programming like monthly accountability groups and some bring in speakers and so on to help get these companies from 250,000 to 2 million, and then once they hit 2 million, then we graduate to the EO group.
I've never heard of a nonprofit accelerator.
Yeah, it is a bit of an odd duck, but it's been around for, like I said, for 20 plus. EO has been around for 20 plus years, 30 years. And then the accelerator side has probably been 15, 20 years.
Got it.
And so we have about 50 companies in the Austin chapter.
Wow.
And so it's a pretty good size group.
So what kind of companies are attracted to the accelerator? Is it startup companies? Is it mom and pops? Is it everything, all the above?
It's across the board. I mean, we have, digital marketers, PR agencies. There's one that was an ed tech company. He just graduated in January, that he was, helping do admission software. There's a guy that does flag football equipment. I mean, it's, across the board.
Fast, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and it's a really diverse group of like the diversity of the members themselves demographically. In the accelerator group, we're probably close to 40-50% women.
Okay.
And so it's all founders.
Right.
And so they're just, at that 250 and above mark. And then we try to help break through that 1 million, 2 million threshold.
Got it. And so, I'm just curious at this point, is it like a once a month meet? Is it like weekly meet? What does that look like?
So we changed our programming just this year a bit from what it traditionally was. We would have previously we would do these quarterly learning days and an all-day event. We recently partnered with the University of Texas, and so we're bringing in professors. There'll be 10 classes once a month for like 3 hours. Some of them are taught by UT professors. Some of them there's a Gino Wickman wrote a book called Traction, and there's this entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, which a lot of early stage companies will use and become really popular. And so a lot of it is, we have some content from that as well. So it's once a month learning days. And then once a month you have your accountability group. So I'm a coach for an accountability group. I have 5 folks in my group. We meet Mondays, 10 to 3. And so you're going through and, what is your wins? What are the things that you were supposed to do this past month? Did you get them done or not? What was blocking you? Setting up those goals for the year and just kind of holding each other accountable. And also, having a place to where you can share what you're going through. So it can be very lonely running a company, because you go off and tell your family that you're going to go do this thing. They're like, that's great. You're leaving your job that pays and,
cool.
and insurance and all that.
I hope you get insurance.
Go sit in a rat infested office and do what now?
Yeah.
You're going to write checks to this thing.
Right.
So it can be a little bit of a lonely journey. So like being in that room with other people who are going through the same stuff, and then also just sharing notes. Like I may be in a completely different industry, but I've solved a problem that maybe is that you're dealing with, and in some ways it's like people in professional therapy hate that I say this, but it is like somewhere between a 12-step program in therapy for entrepreneurs.
Nice.
You just kind of have this tribe of folks that are kind of all going through the same thing.
Got it. Really cool.
Yeah.
And then they go through it as long until they get to a certain revenue, or is it because if you go from 250 to 2 million in like 3 months, do you then just graduate to the next level, or? Yeah,
if you want to, most folks do. They'll opt into quote unquote graduating into EO. And so our local chapter, the minimum is 2 million, being an operator, and 2 million to join EO Austin.
Got it.
And then
as a company, right? Individuals can join outside of that, or no?
Yeah, it's individuals that are founders of the companies. Yeah. So we have 220 members now, and it spans from 2 million to there's a couple $1 billion companies in there. So it's a wide gamut, and the type of companies. Like I was in tech, but there's not there's a handful, but we're not mostly tech, even though Austin being trending as a tech city.
Does that look different than the accelerator? Is it still a once a day or once a month full day thing, or is it different?
Yeah. So a good question. So we put on events and learning and things like that. So 2 years ago, I was the learning chair. And so we did a partnership with UT. And that's actually kind of what spurred the thing that is now the accelerator is doing. But we just did random classes, like here's topics that are interesting and these are experts, and brought them in. But we also, we've had Lance Armstrong come and speak. It's Mark Cuban years ago. And so there's, bringing these big speakers and whatnot. So there's kind of there's a social aspect, a learning aspect, but then the foundational piece is this monthly forum. And so it kind of gets described as a board of advisors for your life and for your business. And so it's kind of the same format, but it's a bit different. There's typically 8 to 10 people. and you're giving an update once a month on you call it your best and worst 5%, in personal, business, and family.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of do this quick 5-minute update, and then there's usually 2 long format we call them presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really a presentation like with PowerPoint or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're going through a business problem or personal problem, what have you, and you're just kind of, the gift is that you're sharing this vulnerability and you're talking through this, and then everybody's going through and giving experience shares,
Right.
not giving advice, but like, when you talked about this, like you may have, maybe dealing with some problem that I've never experienced, but when
Right.
you told me about it, when you did that, it made me think about this time when I was
Right.
dealing with X, right? And then,
So it's peer-to-peer mentorship.
Yeah.
Right?
yes, yeah,
And just
Yeah.
like group therapy, you're encouraged to talk about your own experiences rather than
Exactly.
others.
Exactly. And so there is no advice giving. It is really just around this idea of, somebody being open or vulnerable and putting, opening up about something. They may have solved the problem. They may
Right.
not.
Right.
But
Right.
it's not about, especially in entrepreneurship, being in a situation like that. It's like, oh, you have this is what you should do. Here you're in.
Right,
They're all
right.
problem solvers.
Right. Right.
And so having to sit on your hands and not go into that and to actually turn around and like talk in the terms of like sharing your experience.
Mm.
And it also broadens it to, again, to the thing is like, you may be in some completely different industry or dealing with something that I've never personally dealt with, but the emotions behind it or some of the thing, there's some pattern in it that like when you told me about this, it made me think of this time when I was dealing with X, and this is how I solved it.
Got it.
And it allows like to where we're not just focused on the one person who's presenting, it's the whole group. And the nice thing about it is instead of giving advice, whereas if I give you advice and you take it and it goes bad, you pin that on me.
Right.
Right.
If I give you advice and you don't take it, then I'm like, what's wrong with my advice? I don't have great advice.
Right. Right.
Versus the experience share is that you can pick.
Pick and choose what. what
And it's not just like the person who's presenting, it's like other people around are like,
Right.
that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I'm stealing that.
Everybody learns from that.
Exactly.
That's really cool. So if I'm young in business, let's hit 250,000 and I want to do this, I apply to you guys, and there's a fee, a monthly fee, with more or less what that,
It's an annual,
or annual.
dues. It's around, I believe it's around $3,000
Okay.
a year.
Yeah. $300 a month or $3,000 a year.
Yeah.
And then is that change whenever you go to the other
Yeah.
one? Is it?
Yeah. It steps up, unfortunately.
Well,
You're making $2
you're
million
making more,
now.
Yeah.
making more money. So,
Yeah. And I, off the top of my head, I cannot recall
Okay.
the dues for,
Yeah. Well,
Austin, but it's,
I could be way off, but I think it's like 20, but I could be way
no,
off.
it's not 20.
not that high?
No, thankfully. I'd remember that.
Okay.
No, I want to say it's around 6 or 7.
Oh, it just doubles.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if the $1 billion companies ever feel like they're carrying the weight of the $2 million companies.
No.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't. So that's the thing is like, regardless of your revenue, we don't, your dues are not anchored to your revenue. And that is the thing is like there are like when you get to certain levels of like that, and that's part of the reason there's the bifurcation, for instance, between 250 and 2 million and then EO 2 million and above, is that there are some different problems. Like usually the people are in like the 250 to a million, 250 to 2 million range are they've got something going, but they're trying to build the machine. And it's usually a single person a lot of times, and maybe have a couple employees, but there's no management team and things like that. You start to get that 1 million, 2 million level thing, the wheels start coming off. You can't do everything. You have to start building a management team and dealing with more employee issues and so on.
Yeah. Change
And scaling. So it's really becomes like scaling side. And so it changes a bit. And then there's also kind of other breakpoints when like, the 5-10 million range and 10 million and above, 10-20 million, you start to see like just dealing with this different set of problems. However, there is a common thread between everybody. Like that's the thing is like whether you're 2 million or 250 or 2 billion, there's a lot of commonality between that. Like everybody went through the same thing of like going and hanging their own shingle and having to tell people how crazy they are. They're going to go do this thing. And kind of making it happen. And so there's a real common bond having gone through that experience. And so even though somebody's at 2 billion and has, all these, private equity investors and, an actual formal board,
Right.
and so on, outside investors, so on and so forth, and a different set of problems. There still is this relational ability back to the fact that they were at 250 at one point,
Yep.
and they're $1 million at one point, right?
Well, that's really cool. We're talking about mentorship, and this just shows that entrepreneurs need mentors as well. At various levels, doesn't matter what level you're at, you're still going to need that peer-to-peer mentor. What you're describing, I ran into a lot of several people when I was building my magazine founding in Austin, and I was interviewing entrepreneurs in town. I interviewed several. Scott, who we met through, was one of the members or the people I interviewed, entrepreneurs I interviewed, that was part of EO. So I met several people from the EO membership while I was building the magazine, which was that's how I got to know about EO. And I will attest that when I first started the magazine, before that I was doing my financial planning firm, and you're right, I felt really lonely because you were making all the decisions. But as soon as I started interviewing someone, and it was that peer-to-peer kind of like, oh, you're running through the same things I am, you started feeling this connection of like, I'm not alone. There's so many people out there that are doing the same thing. So I can definitely attest to the value of kind of being in a group that is kind of tackling the same problems. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, when I got suggested to join, I was like, no.
Why?
Because I'm generally
Introvert.
Doing this is out of character, but
Right.
I'm introverted, and this idea like I'm gonna go sit around a bunch of strangers and
Be vulnerable.
I'm gonna meet once a month and bare my soul to a bunch of strangers, and then they have these parties, and then I'm going to pay for the privilege of all the stuff that I do not want to do.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, sign me up. Like how?
Yeah, no thanks.
I'm going to have all this pain and pay you for it.
Yeah. And then I ended up getting, I was like, fine, I'll do it. I'll give it an honest shot for 6 months. And then within 6 months, I was on the board. So not only did I drink the Kool-Aid, I started passing around to everybody else. And it's now, 10 years later that I've been in the organization, and, it was a life-changing thing of just, a lot of growth and, in putting myself in situations that were not necessarily where I would actually lean into, but also the realization too of sometimes I think we can, our aperture can be really small, and thinking that like, okay, I had an ed tech company. And so at the time I was pretty tied into the tech community in Austin. It was like, I know where the software engineers are. I know all the meetups. I don't need any more network.
I don't need to pay for more friends.
No,
or
no, I don't
years.
need every other night I'm going to some meetup to, whatever. And
my calendar is tapping out.
Right.
Yeah. And it was they were great, but they were also just like, a lot of that stuff was like talking about technical stuff. And then getting into EO, like the switch is, so to do, when you get in, you go through forum training, you actually like an all day training to learn like the forum format and how to be doing experience share and whatnot, open, vulnerable, all that stuff. And I was doing that training, which I hated because I was I wore a suit, basically. I wore like a dress shirt and slacks. So I thought this was like a formal thing. And I show up and
You're in flip-flops.
the guy that's like running the thing, his name's Lee. He's a good friend of mine now, but he was wearing flip-flops and a surf shirt and shorts.
That's Austin CEOs, by the way.
He was in Colorado. He's from Colorado.
That's funny.
And now in the Bahamas, so it tracks. But I walk in and I thought he was like doing like food service and setting up. And then, so anyway, I'm like, I'm in this room. I'm going to be in this room for 8 hours. There's no windows. Like I'm signed up for this organization, like all the stuff I hated. Right.
Yeah.
And so we start talking, and there's one point, there's this woman that had a, like salon business, and, she was talking through, there's this, an issue with employees and how she solved it. And as she's talking, like, this is an issue that we had been dealing with and had been fighting about for 3 months and could not get anywhere on. And then she's just like, yeah, we had this thing. And then here's this like elegant
solution.
And prior to that, I was like, I'm looking around the room, like there's nobody here in tech. It's like salon, this person makes bug, like insect repellent stuff. And this guy's got a consultancy for government. And like, I have nothing in common with anybody here.
Right.
Like, what the hell am I doing?
What am I doing?
And then she just goes through and like answered this problem that had been literally keeping me up at night for 3 months, and we have nothing in common, right?
Wow.
And so then I was like, okay, all these people have all the answers. I want her to talk more, like, telling the facilitator, like, Lee, wait a second, I need to hear more from her. She knows how to solve everything I'm dealing with. And so that was kind of like that first time of like, I was just thinking that I need to know people that have done exactly what I've done or are in the space that I'm in, and that's where all the answers are, because that's the path, that's the room. And the reality is like there's this idea of R&D, which is rip off and duplicate. And so where you get that is if you're just like looking at this small thing, it's very homogenous. Like everybody's doing the same thing. They're probably all making the same mistakes a lot of times. Like sometimes we've solved some problems, especially like it's like say tech, like here's this bug, like here's a couple ways to solve it, and everybody's done it. But these broader problems, these harder ones, like that's where like opening up that aperture and actually listening to other folks, and it's like that, and going back to the experience share type of thing, is that you may not have had exactly the same problem, but like here's some of these twists of the way you did it. And like this sounds like a trite example of it. Another like real one is talking to a guy about how we had software engineers and customer support, and the customer support people are very gregarious. They talk, that's what we want. And some of them, their voices kind of carried, and we were in kind of, we'll call it B space, but it was really like maybe a C plus, office space. And the software engineers are like, need quiet. I need to just, focus. And we had walled them off. They were we called the fishbowl. We had walled them off, but the air ducting allowed it just to like carry over. So anyway, we had one conference room, and it was one big conference room, and then these customer support people would go and use that conference room. Like one person sitting at a giant table eating up the entire room just to do a call. So it caused a conflict, and I was lamenting about that to somebody. He's like, "Oh, I had the same issue. We just made these small phone closets, and we're in this again weird building." And like, yeah, we have this gap. And so we ended up making 3 phone rooms, 4 phone rooms, and it solved the problem. Like then people go in, it's like, like I said, it sounds ridiculous, but this is a thing that like we're like having to navigate. We have one conference room, and anytime you want to have a meeting, like you're having to step on everybody's toes. And like, here's this purpose built, and this guy's dealt with the same issue. And if I hadn't had that in different space, like had you not shared that, then I would have never, we would have just been grinding through this thing, and it was just, beautiful little solution. So there's those types of things.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And I just love that you embraced what you were most uncomfortable by. You gave it the old college try for 6 months, and then it worked. Yeah. But also when you got there, you were like, none of these people are going to know what I'm doing or talking about. I can fall into that. And I don't know if it's pride or fear or whatever, but the fact that you stuck it out and learned something is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's common for people. Like, well, I'll say for me, like I will put up it's this negotiation. There's 2 sides of like, one is like, you need to grow, do the thing that's hard, try it out. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And then the other side is going, this is dumb. Why are you doing this? Right. Nobody, like, none of these people are in software. Like this, like, and that side, the reality is like that side is always wrong. Right. It's this protector side of like, you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to get in this weird situation, whatever. You're uncomfortable. So I'm going to give you all these excuses why you should get out.
Right.
And the reality is like, no, it's just fear. Yeah. Like, and that's true. If you tap that down of like it goes back to even like starting a company, like there's
what's your why?
Yeah. Like, what are you gonna tell people? Like, you're leaving. I was on the executive team of this company. Like, we got PE backed, and you're going to leave that to go, and insurance and money and yada, yada, yada. And then the calculus is that, well, when I'm 70 and I look back on my life, am I going to look at my IRA or 401k and go like, I'm so glad I never did that because I have X number of dollars in it. Right. Or I'm going to go back and like, I wonder what would have happened. Right. Even if I had failed, I wonder what would have happened. Right. Like that still, like the hair on the back of my neck stands up, of like that fear of like, no, if I wouldn't have bet on myself, right. Like even if I had failed, I can always stand back up. Like I can go back and get another job, whatever but if I hadn't done that, if I'm sitting there at 70, like that would have eaten me alive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so like that's the thing that gives me the confidence of like, all right, I'm going to go and do this thing, fail probably miserably, be highly public, but then I'll forget about that part. But that's way less scary than thinking about like you didn't try, you didn't bet on yourself.
Right.
That part just
The regrets.
yes.
Yeah.
So I know you said that you're doing that now, and before that you had this ed tech company, and just because I know you sold out of that and built that. But before we get into that, I kind of want to hear your life story, like take you back to your 15 or 13, and who were you then? What did you want to become? And then let's take us through that path.
Yeah. I'm from a small town in Oklahoma. Our claim to fame is Garth Brooks is from the next town over.
The neighboring town as well.
Yeah, but the towns are both so small that any direction you left either town, you ended up in Oklahoma City, because Oklahoma City is this giant amorphous blob.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm the town's called Mustang. Garth, I can call him by his first name because he's a neighbor, is from Yukon. We had Puke on Yukon t-shirts, which you can't find anymore. But anyway, small town. And like I had when you hear a lot of people like talking about entrepreneurship or what have you, there's always like this, like, it's always like serial entrepreneur. I started a paper route and then yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Like that never crossed my mind. Like I was like, this idea didn't, like the idea of actually going and doing my own thing didn't, like I was 28, 30, something like that. So I was pretty quiet, kept my nose down, did, stayed out of trouble, but like, good kid in school, pretty boring.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a literal Boy Scout, as Eagle Scout, did
cool.
That whole, you learn a lot of shame by wearing like, socks that go up above your knees, and then, but like really short shorts.
Till you're like 18.
Yeah. And then like colors that don't really go with anything.
Yeah.
Brown, taupe, and
Right.
and a weird olive green, and then all kinds of other
regalia.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to, I'm going to throw out this weird sidebar, but like you have to do a project to get your Eagle Scout. Yeah. And so mine was like redoing this old lady's house, and nobody knew. I was in a troop in Oklahoma City, not in Mustang, and nobody knew. I never told anybody that I was in Boy Scouts.
Really?
There's one guy that knew, and didn't want anybody ever to know.
He was in the closet.
Yeah.
In the closet.
Yes, I totally was, and I never told anybody. And so we're doing this project, and then the Daily Oklahoman shows up, the newspaper,
right, to
go take pictures. I'm like, oh no. And this photographer is trying to take a picture of me, and I had a ball cap on, and I'm like, he was like, you want to get some action shot of me like painting or whatever, and I'm painting, and he's like trying to take the picture, and then as he goes to take the picture, I turn my head like this, turn it away, and he kept taking other and then finally he's just like gave up. And so the picture of me is like my head half cocked down, you can't see my face, I just hide. I didn't want my name in the paper. I was so wrapped around the axle about that. But
funny.
Yeah, anyway, so that's the level of like shy and
sure.
Buttoned up I was. So anyway, my orientation at that time, like some like around elementary school, early middle school, I just had in my mind I was going to go to the Air Force Academy. And so that's just the path I was on. I got went and applied, and you have to get an endorsement from a letter of recommendation from a senator, and so got all that and did the whole thing. The thing was, like, I was so focused on the goal of getting in and my whole thing was I wanted to be a pilot. And then, but I never, through that time, I never stopped. I was so focused on it. I never stopped to think about if this is really going to work out, and some of the obstacles along the way, namely that around 9th grade, my vision started going.
Oh no.
And I never considered that.
Yeah.
I never stopped to think that
You just assume like I can wear glasses or I can, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even do that. Like I literally did not cross my mind of like, you can't see and you're going to go try to, fly an F-16 or whatever. Yeah. And so, anyway, long story short, I was on leaving high school. Like I lived in the same house for 18 years, same place for 18 years.
Wow.
And then my dad got relocated my senior year. So I spent my last year in Mustang with my mom. My dad and my brother moved to Dallas. And it was this real jarring thing. And so I ended up going to OU, University of Oklahoma, and I showed up on the first day of class and I walked in and I was like, if I get this schedule and I get this dorm, Walker dorm, then I will go to OU. And I walked in and yeah. And so I called the Air Force Academy from my dorm room and said, I'm not coming, and felt super guilty about it. Like that I was, but because I told everybody I was going to do this for like, not just for like 1 year, right? It was like for the most of my life at this point. And so, and then fellas letting down my dad and all this, like really got in my head. And so I tanked like for the first year and a half. And I had to leave. I left school because A, I was paying for it and I had no money. I burnt through my scholarships, and then B, my grades were tanking. Like I went from straight A student to where like I was barely hitting C's, And so I ended up getting a job at a nuclear power plant as an intern in Arkansas, and I was there from like January through August, and it was great because it was it was one of those inflection points. Is the thing that like I realized that if I didn't get my act together and actually, rethink things and just like pick myself back up, my only choice in life was to work at this nuclear power plant, which nothing against people working nuclear power plants. But for me, it was like, I don't want to do this.
That wasn't
like,
your path.
I want to have options.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of reoriented me. And I went back and, I was a mechanical engineer and started working 20 hours a week and taking 18 hours of class and just like, refocused. But what it did is like
so your grades came back up, everything else.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My grades got like, oddly enough, like I had less time, but higher grades. And so, cause I was working all the time, but what it did for me is like, it like that extreme of like what happened is like, it went from, the first part of my life, I was just like focused on this one thing without any ever reorienting.
Right.
Like you it's good to have a North Star, but if you're just walking and then there's a cliff and you just walk off the cliff, like that's the thing. It's like, we need to have a North Star. We need to have a place to orient, but it's the route. Like we have to take the circuitous route to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like walking into like thorn bushes, whatever, along the way, and just like, no, it's this way. It's this way.
This is what I want to do. And I'm
And somebody was like, if you just go this, it'll take you a little bit longer, but this might be the better. No, this is where we're going. Like, do you really want to go there? Yeah, you have to go this way. Like, and never reconsidering.
Well, what I like about what you just said though, is like, because that also, once you realize that you're not going to do that, the emotions that you had to go through just tanked your grades, tanked your focus, tanked everything. And it wasn't that you weren't skilled, it was just that your mind wasn't, like you lost your kind of your place where you're going. As soon as you went through the other 8 months at new, and had to revisit and reflect and figure out, then you started working harder, longer, and grades went back up, everything went back up because you had it in you all the time. It's just your focus had to recalibrate.
Yeah, and it went from being like hyper focused to the point of like detriment, like not letting go, not being willing to change or adjust the path or reconsider, is this still the place we need to be going, to being pushed me into a place where like my only option is this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
My only option is to work at a nuclear power plant in Russellville, Arkansas. And so like I went from hyper focus to where like now you have no options.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got back to school, and what ended up happening is, getting stuff back together, like what I wanted is like, I was fearful that I was gonna
lose it.
Yeah, I was having no options. So what ended up happening is like that I was always looking for, like trying to figure out a way that like where are the exits. I want to have multiple paths to be able to consider. And the thing that I've realized, like I would, whatever I did, I ended up getting my grades back up and whatnot. But like the reality is that I wish I could say like I got everything on like my career in particular was all based on merit. That you looked at my resume and my transcripts and you're like, yeah, this is the person we need or hire. Never happened. Like what happened is that I ended up being good at the thing I've been good at is that when they're making myself available to opportunities of like looking for those things, and when those things happen, being open to considering them and actually leaning into them,
right?
And not just being so like where I was originally, like, no, I am going to the Air Force Academy forever. This is what I'm doing. I'm walking a straight line, even though this is dumb. And
so flexibility versus force.
Yeah. And just being open, like to those things. Like my career, the jobs that I had, the roles that I had, in my mind, I may be thinking about like, yeah, this goes back to like the Boy Scouts, right? You're like, you're tenderfoot, and then you get second class, first class, star, heart. Like there's this leveling up, and like the military is the same thing. Like you go through and do these things, like that. My mind can be oriented that way, but reality is like where I've found success is when there's these opportunities to like stumble into. Like I wish I could say like I planned my career. I knew I would be here someday. Like this, I knew we would be. Like, the reality is that's not how it works, and I had a lot of people that have helped me along the way, going back to the mentorship and just in being open, like doing my best, but being open when those things, those doors come available and being open to considering them.
It sounds like it took this bigger event because what I heard you say is up until 18, you had this laser focus and you weren't listening to any outside advice at that point, but you had to go through this kind of failure, stop, reset, and then that opened your mind to like listen to others, and then that's where the mentorship started helping you along the way.
Yeah, I would say that it was even more of just the being. It's not bad being goal oriented, but I was like, this is the thing that has prestige, or this is people value this. I'm going to go do this hard thing. And that's success, is doing something hard that other people can or won't do, and doing it against all costs, and rather than actually pausing at any time thinking like, do you really want to do this?
What do I want to do?
Why do you want to do it? Oh, you want to fly. You're blind. That's how are we going to, navigate that?
Yeah.
That's so important. As a conversation I was having yesterday about, with the gold medalist we were talking about earlier, he's, the similar point in this is that, the danger, he's like, there's good and bad. The bad is that you get externally validated, that you have this, what you said, systematic thing to get here, and then you're competing against everybody else. This external validation versus looking inside. And that's what I'm hearing here as well. It's like you weren't looking inside what's making you happy. You're like, I'm going to go, if I go do this, everybody else will recognize, versus a growth within, which is you're always, how am I becoming my best self?
Yeah.
Right. And so it sounds like that shift happened for you when you went from this to now you're open and you lean into things because those things were teaching you new things and you were becoming a better self.
Yeah. And I wish I could like, I wish I had that level of cognition or recognition at that time. It's
right. Sometimes it's reflection. You got to look back and
I'm 48 now. I probably just now realized this.
Sure.
Then, like right before I walked in the door.
Yeah.
But it like clicked. But like at the time, no, I didn't. Like it's been more of like thinking back, or like, all right, what are the things that worked and what are the things that didn't in my life, and what are the things that I hate doing shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like there's no time machine. It's all, even if we did have it, we've seen all the movies. It always breaks. You can never go back far enough. But like, what if like taking the lessons from it of those failures, or the things that didn't work out as well or didn't serve me, looking at those things and saying, if I'm in this situation again, what do I do next time? Right. Like not lamenting like I should have done this, I beat myself up or whatever.
What was the learning lesson and what can I?
Yeah, when I see this pattern again, or this thing comes up, this is what I'm going to do, or this is the takeaway I have from this, even though I may not see that again. This is my takeaway. This is how I'm going to carry this forward. And so that's where like that side of reflection is just realizing that, and I can still do that. I can be obtuse and just laser focused. But I catch myself now of like, you remember the Air Force Academy thing? Like, how did that work out?
Self-awareness within you.
Yeah.
Could you tell us or give us an idea of some of the mentors that you can give any credit to along the way, like when you went back to OU after the nuclear plant?
Yeah. So the ones that are probably most significant, like you ever done you're doing like a lifeline here, those things? So
I haven't.
So it's a fun exercise. You kind of like you imagine a graph, and so the x-axis is years, like your years of your life, right? And then the y-axis above that is like, this is when things were good and this is things were bad. And you can focus into like talking about your career or talking about personal, or you can do it all over. And so you kind of like, what are the major milestones in your life or career? And you kind of map those out, and you end up having kind of this curve of like where things are like really great or really bad, and talk through them. It's a great way to, get to know people quickly. And so when I think about my life, like where some of those big inflection points, there's some people that actually like literally in my life, like put a bend in my life's arc. One of them is a woman I went to high school with. She was a year older than me. Her name's Burgundy Kelly. She was like a big sister. And when I was at OU, I was just, I was working at a tech company called Lucent, which went out of business, but I was working there, and my plan was like, I'm just going to, stay in Oklahoma, and, this is a good job, blah, blah, blah. And Burgundy had moved to New York, and she invited me to come visit her. And I'd never been to a big city like that. And so I don't know how I did it, because it was like pre-internet, pre-cell phone stuff. And so somehow flew to New Jersey and got to Midtown Manhattan like at midnight. Got out of the cab. The cab drives off with my luggage. I'm running down the street to go stop the cab. But anyway, I was there for that weekend, and she took me around. Like, I used to be a really picky eater, and I went and, ate all this food that I'd never been exposed to. There's this place I still remember called Mustache, which is like a Mediterranean place. And it was just like and being in this environment, like, 8 million people.
It's intoxicating.
Yes. And it was just, it completely changed my life to where like going back to, this is where I could be laser focused. Like after spending that weekend with her, I was like, I'm getting a job in New York, no matter what. And I ended up getting a job. Long story short, I ended up getting a job in New York, but I lived in Brooklyn, but my job was in Glen Cove, Long Island. So I took that Long Island Railroad. LIR. 2 hours each way. So 4-hour commute every day.
Wow.
To a job.
But you were living in New York.
But I was living in Brooklyn. And this is back before Brooklyn was really cool. It was great. I loved it. And like that, had Burgundy had not done that,
exposed you,
and let me, and I visited her a few times, and done that, and supported me, and like showed me that she could do it. Like she was showing me like the ropes and like I said, even when I was up there, she knew how to navigate everything, find these like shows and all this stuff. And it was like that, like I don't want to be in Oklahoma. I got to get out.
Inspired you, like change.
And you wanted that,
exactly.
You craved that culture as well, probably when you were there. I lived there for 12 years.
Oh, really?
It's my favorite city in the entire world.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? So going from like small town Oklahoma to even like University of Oklahoma is 25,000 people. And that's including faculty and staff. Like it's wow. Everything, right? The town's 25,000 or whatever. And then going to like 8 million, and then all the food, the culture, all that stuff, and just like seeing that, like realizing, oh, there's this huge world out there. Like had she not opened that door, had she not done that for me, like I'd still be in Oklahoma today.
Right.
And then fast forward, the other really big one was I ended up, I left OU, graduated from OU. I worked for a startup in Austin. I showed up here. They said, no, we meant Boston. And the offer letter says Austin. It's like, yeah, we meant Boston. So I lived in a hotel.
Oh, wow.
So it was their fault.
Yeah. So I lived in a hotel for 6 weeks here, and then moved to I drove to Boston, and then I didn't go back for 6 months. I was on the road. Anyway, it was 3 years of, we had like 8 rounds of layoffs, and it was all the lessons of like what not to do necessarily in a company.
Sometimes that's the failure, that's the teaching. That's what
yeah. But I didn't understand like why, and so like that.
So it felt like 3 years of hell.
No, it was actually, it started to get comedic. We had one of them, it was dark comedy, very dark. But we had a layoff round where they put us in 2 rooms, and the CEO walks in, and he's like, if everybody in here, you still have a job, you have 5 minutes to get out of the building, we're going to let everybody else go in the other room. And it was just like a really horrible way to treat people, but like at the same time, like, this is so absurd.
This is ridiculous. Yeah.
But so it was a good experience, but like I was an engineer, and like I didn't understand like I try to ask people like, what are the business reasons, like what are we doing, and they would just always use this like MBA buzzword bingo lexicon, and I couldn't understand. Nobody just like explain. So I decided I was going to go get an MBA, and I ended up like shutting down the business. I was one of the last employees, and I was in California at the time, and then that's what brought me to Texas, brought me to Austin, and so I went to UT for my MBA. While I was there was an entrepreneurship program, and there was guys that started it and been running it. And then there was some friction, something happened between the administration and these folks. Their ideas, especially around entrepreneurship and business, is that it's more of like a journeyman type career. Like it's hands-on. It's not this theoretical. And there was some conflict there. So long story short, they ended up leaving. They started this Acton MBA for entrepreneurship that was around for a while. They don't exist anymore, but in the current form is different than what it was originally. But one of the folks that was there, he, between leaving UT and starting Acton, didn't want to get rusty on teaching, and so he started teaching this class across the street from the Macomb School. There's a church across the street, just the south of it. And so in one of like the Sunday school rooms. So I'm taking 15 hours of full-time MBA program, which I'm paying through the nose for. And then this guy's name is Jack Long. You wrote him a check for $400. He gave you a 3-inch binder of Harvard cases, and you signed a contract. If you violated the contract, like you missed too many classes, you weren't prepared for class. And he had the things that you could call him out on. You sign this contract and then do that. So I ended up spending probably 30 to 40% of my time on that class versus the ones I'm actually paying and getting credit for. And it just completely, this guy, it is in the MBA program. I was a first year, he was a second year. He cornered me, and this guy Byron's like, you have to take this class. He's one of the best professors. And so like, right, we'll write a check to this guy. And being in that room with him, like I thought all entrepreneurs were crazy people who went to Vegas and just, rolled the dice, and like I'm not cut from that cloth. I'm more conservative. I'm not this like wild person. Anyway, like seeing Jack and like and listening to him teach this class and go through and like hearing how he thought about things, which he did the Socratic method. It was more of just, asking questions and probing, but his demeanor, he wasn't telling you all the answers, but he would push you and there'd be a little bit of conversation. But like seeing what he had done, he had co-founded Lone Star Overnight, LSO, the shipping company. Oh, yeah. And then he was currently at that time working on a company called People Admin, which did HR software for colleges and universities. And so seeing him and being around him, like, it's like, it's like if this guy can do it, then I relate to him. Like maybe I could do something. Like I don't know if I could start a company, but maybe I could I want to give it another whack at startups. Like that first one was a weird tour of 3 years, but maybe this would work out. And I ended up meeting his business partner, Jeff Carpenter, and the real reason Jeff wanted to talk to me was because I was from Oklahoma and he wanted to talk, somebody to talk OU football with, being in the belly of the beast. But I got to know him, and they ended up, after I graduated, and him going to work for him. Oh, by the way, so if you finish the class, this is important. If you finish the class, if you got through it, Jack gave you his favorite person in history is Abraham Lincoln. He gave you a book, Lincoln on Leadership, with your check enclosed. If you had violated the contract, like you missed too many classes, you weren't prepared, he cashed your check that morning, like you got burned. And so the
$400 was just a deposit? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
How did he make money? The people that just...
He didn't make... it wasn't about making money. Like, that's the thing. Like, this guy, he's a very philanthropic when it comes about him
learning
giving back.
And teaching.
Yeah. Learning. Yeah. Very passionate about learning, teaching, entrepreneurship. And so like all like he's an amazing person. And so I still have that book. Like I don't keep a lot of books, but like still have my Lincoln on Leadership that had my $400 check in. I still have the 3-inch, but I got rid of every other case, all that stuff that I went through 2 years of the MBA program. I still have my 3-inch binder from,
That's
Jack
cool.
Long's class. So
talk about mentorship.
Yeah.
And somebody on your bell curve.
yes. And so like that was the thing. Like I went to work for those guys, and that being in that company, I got to witness and see what they were doing. And it started with like taking that class and just being around Jack and seeing him. And then in the company, more so being around, Jeff was more involved in the operations. Jack was kind of, backing Jeff at that point. But had I not sat in that class, I'd not been in that and like seen like, here's this other way, here's this person that I relate to and I could see myself in and go like, if this guy can do it, like, I don't know if I can do it, but maybe I can be, I want to be in that environment. I want to learn from this person. And then fast forward, like both Jack and Jeff offered to back me when we went to go start Academic Works. And so like having that vote of confidence, like that whole line, to have somebody like that I looked up to so much, turn around and say like, hey, if you go do something, I'd be interested.
Did you ever work with Byron again?
But Byron was just a classmate.
Okay.
But Byron and I were good friends, but we both went through that class together. Yeah. And had that experience. That was a huge turning point.
I love it. I love it. And this is why we do this show, because there's so many people that, if we think about the statistics, only 10% of people have think about a mentor to kind of help them in life. But we hear roadmap stories like this, where it's like, I'm doing all these things, I have this laser focus, all this thing happens, and then a couple of people just really change my life, open my life, do all of these things. So I can't believe that we're already out of time today. That was
That is crazy.
Such an engaging story. No,
it was great. How was that an hour? I was just here
we're like,
for it.
Interesting.
A lot of sidebars.
But no, it was an amazing story, and I hope and I know that the audience will get a lot from that. Cool. Thanks for being here today.
That was my pleasure.
Really
Really
love the story and the learnings.
Great. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Matthew Thomas, for sharing your incredible journey, wisdom, and insights on mentorship, entrepreneurship, and business growth. His story is proof that the right connections and mentors can open doors, shift perspectives, and accelerate success. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It helps us reach more listeners like you. If you have any thoughts on today's episode, connect with us on our socials and let us know what resonated with you the most. If you'd like to be a guest or submit a question as a Gen Z contributor, check out our show notes for details on how to participate. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and stay uncharted.